إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So already is a good start. MashaAllah, Sayyid by not here, supposed to make the introductions. We'll have words with him when he gets here, inshallah. It's nice to be, mashallah, in, is it Batley? Is it Dewsbury? Which one is it? Batley, yeah. Nice to be here in Batley. It's always difficult for a Bradfordian to realize at what point Batley stops and Dewsbury starts. It's all a bit of a mixture. The topic, I was asked to speak about is on Islamic finance. So basically we're talking about money. So surely it should be a topic that's of, everyone's interest. Whether you've got it or you haven't got it, either way, it should be interesting. As students of the Sharia, what we tend to find amongst us is a topic which is most difficult to understand is Islamic finance. That sits in the broader subject matter of mu'amalat, which again is quite technical. Those of you who studied books like Hidayah, you'll find we spend hours and hours and weeks and months and years on all the ibadat, yani on tahara, absolutely clean tahara. See what I did there? Yeah, absolutely clean tahara. And then salah, mashallah, we stand all night going through Kitab al-Salah. But as soon as it gets to Kitab al-Buyu, then before it's even started, it's already finished. And the understanding is always complicated. And we're speaking about things which sometimes we can't relate to, because we live in a modern world where we don't transact in the nature that we find in the books of fiqh. So finance is always a complicated topic. Mu'amalat is always a complicated topic. So to speak about finance, what I would like to do first is to kind of take you back, because we need a context in order to then draw from that context of where we are right now. So in going back in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, we had certain things which what we call mabi, which were products. Okay. Mabi is something which the bay is there for, meaning the product that we want. There's a desire for something. We want that thing. We don't have it. In the old days, we used to barter. So for example, if you made jubba and I was a goat herder, I would bring a couple of goats and I'd say, I want 10 jubbas. You'd say, okay, 3 goats. And we'd exchange. You were in need of goats. I was in need of jubba. Perfectly fine. It was the coincidence of the two needs where bartering started from, where both of us had this need. However, obviously in the world, it doesn't work like that. So we had something which was called a thaman. Thaman was something which everybody had. Okay. It was easy to carry. It was relatively light. It did not change over a period of time. It remained the same over a period of time. And so you find both within the Quran and in the Hadith, thaman was looked at as dhahab al-fidda, gold and silver. So gold and silver became the means by which everybody could carry in a small pouch. It wasn't, it was finite. There was only a certain amount of gold and silver on the planet. And therefore, it made life a lot simpler in dealing in transactions. There was an element of risk, of course, because when you entered into the world of business, what you'd have to do is you'd have to risk that I'm going to buy this particular brand of jubba. I'm going to buy it cheaper, and I'm expecting that there's going to be a market need and I will sell it for something more expensive. So I will make money. So there was an element of risk. There was an element of depending upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we found that whether in Islamic scripture or even the scriptures which came before, those that were given to the Christians, or really the Christians were sent, as they were called, were sent a reminder through Isa alayhi salam of what the Mosaic, yani Musa alayhi salam's laws were. And it was always made clear that riba, something which was called usury, interest, was made impermissible. And the way usury and interest was considered impermissible is based on the principle of the commoditization of money. Meaning that the thaman becomes a mabi. Okay, the thaman becomes a mabi. So the actual thing, the gold and the silver, which was used as an exchange for other items that people sought, like food, clothes, housing, that became actually the sought after thing. So the thaman has now become the mabi, which is unusual. And this is where obviously it's less risky. There's no element of trade. You're giving money, but in order to benefit from that money, you're expecting more money in return. So this was made impermissible. This has been made impermissible since humans have walked on the surface of the earth. Any Sharia which has come to any Nabi has made this impermissible. Because what it does, you see, it brings about hoarding. Because if now the thaman is the mabi, then you keep it. So you start hoarding. You start taking the gold and silver out of circulation. If gold and silver is out of circulation, because gold and silver is finite, then there's less people trading. Because that gold and silver now is resting in your safe. That gold and silver now is with you. So there's nobody trading it anymore. So it limits entrepreneurship. It limits the growth of society. It limits investments. It limits innovativity and innovation. You start to see a change in society. And all you get is people holding on to money, giving money and expecting more money back in return. And thinking, why do we need to innovate? Why do we need to invent things? Why do we need to make things? As long as I have money, I give out money and I get more money in return. And what that did was it made the rich richer, but unfortunately it made the poor poorer. So that was something which the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade right from the offshore. So remember, whenever we look at things in ibadat, sometimes we don't see the hikmah. You know, when we say, okay, when I'm praying 5 times a day, what's the hikmah of that? Okay, making wudu 5 times a day, I'm keeping myself clean. Okay, I can see maybe some hikmah there. But what is the hikmah of standing for a certain duration, going into ruku for a certain duration, going into sajda? Sometimes we can't see it. But in the mu'amalat, you see it quite clearly of why Allah forbade riba. What was his rationale? What was the reasoning, as we call it, the illah? What was the purpose? What was the problem that this was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was trying to deal with? There's other things like, say, gambling, maisir, speculative transactions. All these were made forbidden. Hard work was encouraged, and this was what was put forward. So this is where we find ourselves in. And we know, for example, the law that existed within the Catholicism. Catholicism also forbade riba in the early stages. Similarly, Judaic law forbade it. But when the Jews found a kind of exception to the law is when they were dealing with non-Jews. If we're dealing with non-Jews, now we can start charging riba. It's only when we're dealing with Jews that we can't charge riba. So they started to look at things in different, and they introduced that into the European system, and we found ourselves in that situation we find ourselves in. So this was how the transactions existed. This is how business existed for a very long time. But then you're getting groups of people who want to become richer and more powerful and take greater risks. So whether it's, for example, the movement of international trade, the movement of millions and billions of pounds worth of goods across the planet, or other things of this nature, we started to see this whole system being challenged. But primarily this was challenged based on riba. This is the key thing to understand, because we'll get onto Islamic finance. The principle here was the construction of riba, making every country and everybody's financial system based on riba. And now when you look across the world, every country, every financial system is based on riba. You cannot escape it. Any country that's doing trade, whether it's the International Monetary Fund, whether it's the World Bank, whatever it is, people are more than happy to give out loans. More than happy. But obviously loans come with strings attached and with interest that has to be paid over generations and generations. Up until we then moved away from gold and silver. I'll get to the up until point. We moved away from gold and silver. Why? Because people robbed people. So they were highway robbers. So if I knew that you had a purse full of gold or a purse full of silver, I'd put a knife to your throat and take your gold and your silver. So they needed a safer alternative. So the safer alternative is where we got paper currency. The paper currency was, you went to the bank, you put your gold and silver in the bank, and you carried a piece of paper around. I promise to pay the bearer of. And if you've got your notes inside your wallets, So that we're not collecting any donations. But if you want to check the notes inside your wallets, it will say, I promise to pay the bearer of this. You could do it now. It's a little bit of an experiment. The masjid is not going to take that money. You can put it back straight into your wallet straight after. Still not sure. I will not take that money. Nobody's going to do that test. Somebody's going to, mashallah, somebody's doing it. Allah bless him. Grab him. Sorry. Does it say at the top, I promise to pay the bearer of this? That's right. So that is actually not £10. Okay, that is a piece of paper which says, I promise to pay the bearer of this £10. What he would have done back in the day if he was living centuries ago, he would go to the bank, give him this piece of paper, and they would give him £10 worth of gold. And now he would do his business. So this just became like a credit note that we carried it now. It was safe. So even if we got attacked, we would quickly go to the bank and say, I've been attacked. My credit note's been taken away from me, and this is the reason. And all we'd do is we'd go to the bank and we'd be able to collect the gold from the bank. That was the case, and those notes, predominantly, obviously, the British Empire ruled the seas. And when the British Empire ceased to rule the seas and the American Empire started to rule the seas, then the dollar was underpinned by gold and silver. Silver was abandoned very early on, because you'll know, for example, when you're checking your zakat, you'll see that the silver nisab is exceptionally low and the gold nisab is very, very high. So silver nisab will be something like, what's silver nisab at the moment? Surely you've worked out your zakat. What's silver nisab approximately? I'm trying to make this interactive so that it keeps you awake. Silver nisab, approximately, andaza. Andaza, what was it when you gave your zakat in Ramadan? Ramadan was only a few weeks ago. Come on, guys. Stay with me. None of you given zakat. So none of you got money in your wallets. None of you given zakat. Hey, what world do we live in? Approximately, what is silver? No, silver nisab is a lot higher than that. What's silver nisab? Go on, young man, you've been checking on your phone. Nah, not gold, we'll do silver first. Sorry? About £1,000. Okay, the man with the money knows the answers. Right? The man with the money knows the answers. So £1,000 andaza roughly is the silver nisab. Meaning if anybody has above £1,000, they are considered by the Sharia to be ghani, which means they need to give 2.5% of their wealth, which they have had with them, as zakat. Not as a donation, but as something which is compulsory. So gold nisab is 4,000? My God, when was the last time you bought your wife a ring? What's your name, brother, so I can embarrass you on this? No? Gold? Did you get gold? No? I thought you were looking for gold. You saw gold. No. We're looking for gold now. Batley's not known for its money, eh? 3.5? 3.5? No chance. What is gold nisab? Sorry? 8,000? 9,000? About that. It's around 10,000. So it is 10 times as high as the silver nisab. Back in the day, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, silver and gold were approximately the same, because the value was 10 times as much. We have what, 200, is it 200 dirham? 20 dinar? Yes? Something like that. So even though we use 10 times as much, because we're using 10 times, the value worked out the same. Not everybody who had gold and silver. Some people had camels. Some people had sheep. Some people had goats. So it was always equated in such a way that you wouldn't get clever, that if you were dealing in gold and silver, you think before the zakat collectors would come, I'm going to transfer it from gold into sheep. So now the zakat collector turns up, it goes below the nisab of sheep, everything is all right. As soon as he goes back, you exchange it back from the sheep back into gold and silver. Right? You couldn't do that. Why? Because across the board, the Prophet ﷺ had set the nisab for every type of asset to be exactly the same. So it didn't benefit you jumping from one asset into another asset. It was the same. Now we have a huge discrepancy between silver and gold. Huge discrepancy. So what happened then was silver was abandoned by the powers that be nearly a century or so ago. And gold became the underpinning asset for all money. In 1971, I believe, sorry?
73.
Go on.
No, you said 1971.
Yeah, in 1971, I believe, Gold was also removed as an underpinning of determining the value of the dollar. That's when inflation went through the roof. Okay. So the value of your money now is controlled by your government. Right? The value of your money now is controlled by your government. There's no gold or silver. You can go to the Bank of England and say, wait a minute, I promised to pay the bearer of this £10. I want £10 worth of gold. They will laugh in your face. All we got in our pockets is piece of paper. All we have in our bank accounts is pieces of paper, just numbers. What the value of those numbers are, the Bank of England decides. Yeah, the Bank of England decides. So they want to devalue it because they need to go to war. They don't need to ask you for any money. They just devalue the money in your bank account. Okay, so that's how the world has changed. And there's a context. This is all building till we get to Islamic finance, because you might be thinking, what's the rationale for all this little history lesson? It all will, because Islamic finance is operating within the world. And how the powers that be, and I'm not going to start, spewing conspiracy theories at you. I'm sure there's many conspiracy theories in Batley and Dewsbury. I'm not going to add to those conspiracy theories about who controls the world and what's happening in the world and what's going on in the Middle East and all of that stuff. Mashallah, I'm sure there's people sharing all that with you. I'm going to try to keep it, real as much as possible. So the powers that be that benefit now from this system. Okay, this system that has now been created, where now we've given up all our gold, we've given up all our silver, we all walk around with pieces of paper getting really happy in our pockets, which is controlled by somebody else, and we have these digits in our bank account, which is controlled by somebody else, and they determine the value of things. So, for instance, you'll find, and I can see, even though this is a youth conference, mashallah, it's nice to see some white-bearded people as well, alhamdulillah, because we obviously consider ourselves amongst the youth, don't we? Okay, he's not sure. I definitely do. Okay. So, you'll know if you bought like, a bag of flour or a bag of rice in 2000, how much would it cost you? And how much that same bag of rice is costing you now in 2025, 2026. Those of you around here who bought your house in the 1990s, anybody here who bought a house in the 1990s? There's nobody. What do you guys do? Nobody's got money. Nobody wants to put their hand in their pocket. Nobody knows the nisab of silver. Nobody knows the nisab of gold. Nobody's bought a house ever. What are you like, buzurgs, mashallah? You stay in the masjid all day doing Allah, Allah. Nobody's got a house. Has anybody in the house? Would you like me? Have you got food to eat? Do you want to do chanda for you in Bradford? Or do it Sunday here? Someone's got a house. Yeah, okay. I don't want to put you on anyone on the spot, you see, because it'd be like a secret millionaire. And I'll say, oh, brother, how much did you buy your house for? 5.6 million. Okay, wrong guy. Somebody here was like, when did you buy? I don't want to put anyone on the spot. Anybody bought their house in the 1990s? 1980s? 2000s? Yeah, okay. What was it? I won't put the brother on the spot, mashallah. Has the value of your property gone up? Minor. Okay, you bought the wrong house. Yeah. So basically, let me try this in a different way then. So my mother and father, they bought a house in 1971 for £2,000. That house is not worth £2,000 anymore. So the question is, how can a house that was worth £2,000 in 1970 no longer be worth £2,000 in 2025, 2026? Right? Surely it should be cheaper, because glass is cheaper to make. Manufacturing is better, whatever. The reason being is that the value has depreciated because the value of money has gone down. So all that money in our bank account where we think, yeah, we're doing all right, we're not actually doing all right. Because then the same amount of gold would have bought you that house in 1971, the same amount of gold will buy you that house in 2025. Same amount of gold. So if it was 100 grams of gold, I'm making it up, then 100 grams of gold would also buy you the house in 2026. All right, so this is money. So we need to understand this. So we need to understand the global system before we can understand Islamic finance. Okay. What time we have Maghrib here? Or we always in state of Salah in Batley? Because I don't want to ask you these questions anymore. I think you're always in the state. I mean, we're not about Mufti, we don't even break wudu here. Have you broken your wudu yet? Even at night, we don't break wudu. We're always qiyamul layl, qiyamul, What time is Maghrib here? I feel like I'm amongst angels. I feel like a sinner here. You know. Sorry. 54. So we'll finish about 1:45. Is that okay? I think we've got a Q&A after. If Sajid Bhai turns up, has he turned up yet? Well, if he's here. Is he here? Right, okay. Find out where he is. I'm going to have words with him. So we'll stop at 1:45. We've got about another 15 minutes, inshallah. So I was talking about the global system. I was talking about how money works and understanding all of these sorts of things. So we then have obviously regulation within this country. We have the FCA that regulates everything. Anywhere money is being used, anywhere money is being invested, they regulate it. They make sure that whether it's the Credit Consumer Act, whether it's the FSCS, all these are put in place to, protect the individual. So these exist as well. Prior to, even the 2000s, I would say, there was hardly any Islamic finance in the UK. Hardly any. There was little bits going on, but relatively speaking, the interest has been generated recently, which is alhamdulillah good based on the community, because I guess when our parents arrived, or in some cases your grandparents arrived, priorities were very different. It's making sure there's a masjid, is making sure there's halal food, is making sure that, the day-to-day matters could be dealt with. Similarly, like with the time of the Sahaba radiyallahu ajma'in, they had, bigger things to be concerned about. That's why we always ask the question, why didn't the Sahaba ask the Prophet alayhi salam about a particular verse? So we'd have all, tafasir, all these questions asked to the Prophet alayhi salam, because there's very few ayats in which the Prophet alayhi salam has given tafsir in detail. And it always puzzles us, doesn't it? That, I'm sure if I was sat there, I would have asked this question. That's because they had bigger issues to worry about. Yeah, there were mushrikun attacking on this side. There were munafiqun plotting in the masjid. There was all sorts going on. The last thing they had was this academic pursuit for understanding every minutiae of an ayah. They had bigger fish to fry, so to speak. They had bigger issues to deal with. So similarly, when our parents or grandparents arrived, they had other issues. When the wives came, how am I going to ensure my children stay as Muslim? Where is our ulama? What about having a darloom? Where about our future graduates going to come from? They had these things to worry about. But so when, mashallah, second generation, whatever, started to settle, they then started to look at these other things. And we started to bring Islamic finance. So whenever we talk about Islamic finance, it has to sit within that context that I've just given you. All right. So it's think of it as a little ant, right? Trying to challenge this big ant-eater. That's where we are. So what are the things that we have to avoid? Well, we have to avoid riba. And riba isn't just something where you give some money and you get more in return, which is the way we understand it. It can also be, for example, certain sharait, certain conditions, which are referred to by the ulama as a shurutul fasida, which are written within the contract. And those which are written within the contract, they give an unfavorable advantage to one party over the other. And usually the unfavorable advantage is given to the party that is the powerful in the partnership. So if you're applying for a job, your employer will set all the terms and conditions. You will have very few terms and conditions that you can put forward yourself. You're not really equal partners in this. And what the Sharia asks for is equality, so that nobody oppresses the other party. Because that's what riba is. Riba is, in essence, oppression. It's oppressing another person. And Islam came, and every religion, every divine religion that was sent from the heavens was sent to challenge this, so that people would not be exploited, people would not be abused. Exploitation, for example, if I had 300 grand in my bank account, I could go buy a 300 grand house for 300 grand. But if I don't have 300 grand in my bank account, I have to go get a loan, a mortgage. If I get a mortgage, I pay back 600 grand. Strange, eh? I was poor. I didn't have money, and I've now paid 600 grand. And the rich guy, he had 300 grand, he had money, and he only paid 300 grand. So the poor is getting exploited, right? The rich isn't getting exploited. And people might say, yeah, but you chose to do that. Well, I have to live somewhere. Okay, I didn't choose to do that. If I was given a choice, I'd rather have a house for free. Okay, but in this case, I had no choice. I had to go here. So this is the kind of backdrop. So riba, or any forms of riba, and obviously I don't want to get too kind of technical. It's enough to discuss that for now. And also things which were very speculative. So, I don't know, I doubt any of you buzurgs, mashallah, have heard of something called cryptocurrency. Have you heard of cryptocurrency? Nah, never heard of it. Heard of it? All right, okay. My goodness, where did you hear that? You've just about heard of zakat and sadaqah and gold nisab and silver nisab, and you only won £10 note in all of you. I'm surprised you've heard of cryptocurrency. You have heard of it, or you're just playing me on now, trying to act clever. You have? Okay, very good, mashallah. So obviously in certain cases, most unfortunate cryptocurrencies are speculative, basically gambling in essence, what you're doing, because we don't know if that cryptocurrency exists. It doesn't exist. Is it real? How do you determine it? You know, it's already a black art as it is. And how, you know, and people are thinking, yeah, but it could be the next Bitcoin. It could be the next Bitcoin. You know, if I had invested in Bitcoin when it was worth, you know, $10, I'd be a multimillionaire right now. So this next one that's come out, which is I'm going to skank you coin, might make me a millionaire. Nope. Read that again. I'm going to skank you coin. Yeah. So there most are. You know, when I speak about these things and I tell brothers, don't invest. So many times, Musab, you know, I know you told me not to invest in that. Well, I invested in it. I've lost 100 grand. I've lost 50 grand. I've lost 40 grand. And people lose money over it in cryptocurrency. So anything which is speculative, I'm not saying that the whole concept of, blockchain and all that is impermissible. That's a separate topic. I'm talking about speculative investments of this nature. So again, these are made forbidden. So Islam now is trying to say, okay, well, you know, Muslims want to buy a house. Right? We want to buy a house. How am I going to buy a house? You know, if you're telling me this is haram, this is haram, this is haram, this is haram, we don't all live, you know, like Malaika here in this masjid, where we don't have houses, we don't have food, we don't have money, we just wait and the rizq of Allah just descends and we just eat it like manna and halwa, you know. We don't need to worry about these things, Mufti. You people in Bradford have to do that. You know, you need to hang out with us more. But normal people have to buy a house. So how do you buy a house? Well, you can rent. Of course, yeah, you could rent. That's an option. But, you know, people will argue that it's not safe. You know, I've got a family, I've got a wife, I've got kids. You know, I know the legislation changes in April now, which gives tenants stronger rights compared to the landlord, which previously it didn't. So, you know, that's an option. And at the end of the day, you know, you live in this world for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, you die. You're not going to take anything with you. But then you think, well, yeah, I want to leave something behind for my children, don't I? You know, the time I've spent here, I want them to have an easier life than I had. So there's an argument made that buying a house makes more sense, but we don't have 300-400 grand in our bank accounts. So how are we going to go buy those houses? So there's a need for buying houses. There's also, we all have bank accounts. And, you know, we complain and go onto WhatsApp and say, oh, astaghfirullah, look what's going on in Gaza and astaghfirullah. And then we're checking at the same time on our, you know, business, on our bank account. Oh, mashallah, I got 150k or whatever. Where have you invested it, brother? Oh, with this bank, that bank. Oh, mashallah. Where do you think that bank and this bank are spending that money? So this is what we call cognitive dissonance. We don't connect things up. Yeah. You put your 150 grand, 200 grand in that bank, and that bank, where do you think this money is going? Yeah, that money is not sat, there's no one sat in this bank with his vaults, with all these notes sat in it. There's no vaults. There's no coins. There's no gold. There's no silver. It's just digits on your phone. So basically that money is used. Okay, that money is used. And then we say, oh, it comes over there, you know, there's so many Musliman and we can't even do this and we can't even do that. I wonder how my 150 grand is going on. What's going on? Very nice, mashallah. So then we say, yeah, you know, we need Islamic banks. I've had many practitioners say, Mufsab, you sit on the minbar or sit on the nice cream chair and you talk about, you know, we need Islamic banks, we need this, we need that. So we do it. But then the community doesn't support us. We spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds to go through all the regulations in order to get into this banking, because getting into banking, as you know, is controlled by certain powers. It's not easy to get into that world. That door is shut. So to get into that world is very difficult. You've got to jump through so many hoops over certain hurdles, and it costs money to do that. And then when they offer this to the public, to the service, the Muslims are still happy with their whatever banks that they are, you know, your high street banks. It's safer there. Listen to what we say. It's safer there. It's safer in this non-Muslim bank that's doing ABC than it is with this Muslim brother. And we say, why don't Muslims stick together? Yeah, you know, it just doesn't add up, does it? So we need banking, you know. For those of us who pay bills, obviously you don't pay bills. You don't use gas, you don't use electric, you don't eat food. But for those people, normal people, we pay bills. So we need somehow for the transaction to take place through the bank account. So we need bank accounts, we need homes, even buying cars nowadays. Do you have cars? You know what cars are? You know, those things with wheels and they move. Yeah, you've seen them? Oh, mashallah. I bet all of you go like Mercs packs. I was saying, let this guy carry on for a little bit, And then as I go up, beep, 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 all the fly out there. Actually, guy gets in a Merc, guy gets in this. Right? So nowadays buying a car is quite expensive, isn't it? It's okay buying a second-hand one for 3-4 grand. It's all right. We can maybe save 3-4 grand. But if you want something reliable, especially if you're traveling quite a lot or you're a businessman, you might need a 10, 20, 30,000 pound car. But you may not have the capital to buy that car. So, there's also finance to support in those things. So we realize that the world we live in, it's not that simple world where you can go to the market, buy a donkey, make the car yourself, and that's it. You're ready to go. It's a fast world. It's a different world. And as Muslims, we believe that Islam is till the end of days. Islam has to give us solutions till the end of days. Islam is not just for the 7th century. Islam is not just for the 10th century. Islam is not just for the 16th century. Islam is open till the point the last human walks on the surface of the earth. But the world is very different. The transaction, the trade we do is very different. So therefore the ulama have to be on board with these changing times in order to advise us, and the practitioners or those people who do the work that set up these bank accounts or set up these banks, whatever, they need that support in the meantime. Last few minutes. So what would say buying a house via mortgage and buying a house without buying mortgage, how would that differ? Well, buying a house via mortgage, the transaction is very different. Some people say, oh, Mufti, we've heard all this Islamic finance. They just stick a word Islamic in front of it. It's all the same. Sab sud hai. It's not. What's the difference? In fact, Islamic finance is more expensive. So they're even worse than the sud guys. They're like double sud. They're like Sudan. Right? At least with these guys, they were just hitting me a little bit. These guys are charging me double. So let's just for the record, set this out. In a normal mortgage, the bank just gives you money. They're not interested in what you're using it for. All they care about is you as a person, that do you have capacity to pay this back? If you have a wacky idea, crazy idea, they'll say, hey, go ahead. Yeah, oh, of course, yeah, good idea. Because at the end of the day, they just want money out of you. They don't care if there's any success. They have no buying in the product. All they have buying is you as a person. So they will give whatever, 100, 150 grand, 200 grand to buy a house or whatever you're buying. And now you'll be paying back that mortgage to those people for 25, 30 years. So you're stuck now for the next 25, 30 years. They're obviously charging interest on top. If you can't pay, they will repossess your property, sell your property, get their money back. With the Islamic version is very different. In the Islamic version, what they're trying to do is say, right, what is it you're trying to buy? I'm trying to buy this property. They'll say, okay, we'll buy the property for you. Or we'll enter into this together as partners. So we will take 90% or 80%. You will take 10, 20%. So if it's a 200 grand house, what's 10% of 200 grand? Sorry? So a bit unsure. 20. That's it. A little bit of confidence. Okay, now let's push this brother a little bit more. What's 20% of 20 grand? 40. Yes, good. See, mashallah, we've got somebody who's got some, so 40 grand. So they'll ask you for 40 grand. And what will they give you? For a 200 grand property? 160. Okay. But you're now part ownership with this institute. So the bit which they own and you're living in, are you going to live for free? No, you got to give them pay rent, don't you? They own 90%. Okay, or in the case example we gave, they own 80%. You own 20%. You're living in a house that you only own 20%. And somebody else owns 80%. Are they going to let you live for free? Of course not. So they're going to charge you rent. So they charge you rent. But you also have a desire to buy the house outright. So you need to now pay to buy that other 80% from me. So you're making two payments to me. One payment you're making to me because I'm your landlord and you're living in my property. And the second payment you're making to me is you want to buy the property off and be the sole owner of it. Hence the reason why you find that is slightly more expensive than this one is. But people say, but why? Right? Why is it more expensive? Okay. If I say went to McDonald's or KFC or whatever else, and I bought you a chicken burger, and I said, brother, this chicken burger is $1.99. And you got excited, $1.99 chicken burger. And then I went to some HMC place, and I bought you another chicken burger, identical, and I said, brother, this is £4. You say, Be'akuf, why am I going to buy the £4 one? I'm going to buy the £2 one. Just before he goes for the £2 and say, yeah, but that's haram. Are you going to eat the £2 one? Yeah, but it's £2. That one's £4. You're not going to. Why? Because you don't care what is more costly. What you care is what is halal. What you care is what is halal. That which Allah has made legal for you against that which Allah has made illegal for you. If you steal water, it's free. Yeah, if you walk past a shop and you have a little nosy, I'm not condoning stealing. Obviously, you're all malaika, so you won't do it anyway. But if you're walking past a shop and there's a water bottle there and you take it and drink it, you pay $0. It's free. But if you walk into the shop, he's going to charge you £2 for the water. So which one are you going to do? Steal it or drink and pay £2? There's a bit unsure here. We're having a moral dilemma. Oh, tough question myself. I'm inclined towards stealing it, but obviously I can't say that in a masjid. So I'm going to say, I'll pay £2, Mufti, of course. Yeah? But £2 is more expensive than free. Isn't it? £2 is more expensive than free. But one is haram and one is halal. So similarly, this system, the ribwi system, is made in this way for it to be attractive, right? Shaitan will always draw you towards things which are more attractive, right? There's some young children, so I'll keep the language PG. Yeah, Shaitan will always direct you towards things which are more attractive, even though you've got the same thing at home. Shaitan will be, directing you this way, that way, the other way. Why? Because one is haram and the other is halal. Okay, that's the difference that we need to bear in mind. I did say I will speak to quarter after inshallah Maghrib. We'll do a little bit of Q&A, but I think to give it some kind of order, we could do it in this similar way like this, or we could collect a piece of paper and write it. And he's got a smile on his face, a cheeky smile on his face, and then we can read it in that way, or however the format. I'm easy, inshallah. So, but we'll stop there for now. Mainly again, obviously on finance. We're not going to ask generic questions of, when is the Mahdi going to arrive? For now, just focus on Islamic finance, inshallah. We'll deal with that, and then maybe another time we'll talk about those. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.